All right, let's go back to reality a little bit and talk about wizard builds specifically for farming that don't require, say, 7,000 resonance or more. Yesterday I showed off a whale build that's very effective, but it requires an extremely high power level in order to just kind of waltz your way through the mobs and have them die as you pass by. Now I'm going to show today what's become the most popular wizard build. Certainly isn't anything I came up with. There's just a ton of people running this. I have no idea who actually has credit for this build originally. However, thank you whoever it is. So let's take a look at the essences first. What we're going to use in the helm here is actually going to be crushing weight, and this is going to increase your damage by 10%. And look at the duration here. 4.8 seconds is a pretty long time, especially when you're farming, right? You're going from pack to pack. And we're also going to pair this with 2-piece Vithus. We'll talk more about the set pieces as we get further along in the video. But when you add the Vithus into this duration is just extremely long, right? We're looking at 6.4 seconds roughly thereabout, and it's just going to be an enormous uptime to have this damage bonus. For shoulders, there's a couple of options here, but I have a strong preference to the perfect situation. This is going to increase your movement speed by 30%, as well as reducing teleport cooldown with the Essence Mastery level here. I definitely prefer these, so I don't even want to mention the other pair. Personally, this allows you to have increased movement speed. If you aren't running Issatars, if you aren't running Massacre, or if neither of those bonuses are active, this gives you another way to kind of get your movement speed. When you're farming, you're not always going, right? Yeah, it makes sense when you start your loop. In an ideal situation, you're going to continue 100% of the time, but the reality is a lot of us farm while doing something or multitasking. So a lot of times you stop, and this kind of helps you pick up back where you left off and get going again. And the other pair of shoulders just doesn't provide enough to really make a difference, so I just really like this one to kind of allow you to kind of take breaks when necessary. For a chest, we're using Alora's Fervor, and this is just the Fire Nova that comes out. Very strong, especially when farming. A ton of sets that will work with this as well. For pants, we are going to continue to use the same pair, which is the Novel Castigation. If I find them, here they are. This is going to have our Arcane Torrent do additional damage. The trade-off here is previously typically Rift Dance or Stride was used, allowing you to target the teleport. Well, in this case, the extra damage is a little more beneficial. Teleport isn't very clunky at all, especially from the default essence. It's one of the better mobility skills. So just having the baseline teleport in regards to aiming really isn't a hindrance. Same weapons apply here. This is still going to be Thunderbird's Bite, increased Lightning Nova damage, and now we actually get more benefit out of this main hand. The reason is because our Lightning Nova now does more percentage-wise of the damage that we actually deal, okay? With the other version of Lightning Nova, the speed increase, or the Archon as I like to call it, it's not doing as much of our damage comparatively to other skills, but in this version of the build, where we change something around and have the Fire Nova, this actually becomes better. So there's absolutely no reason to change that. Second piece is still going to be the Rift Carver. This is going to allow our Arcane Torrent to just kind of hover over us as a chaotic orb that just fires out in various directions. Very strong, and removes the channel requirement of this ability. So this allows us to have Arcane Torrent on and makes it into the kind of the beneficial farming ability that it is. Now for offhands, we're also going to continue to use the Siphon. This is going to increase our speed when casting Lightning Nova. We no longer have that permanent 50% movement speed, so this is now very strong for us. Right now we can get 60% off of Lightning Nova, also with a reduced cooldown, and the uptime on Lightning Nova is super high, right? So you're really moving at a high speed all the time, regardless of your set pieces, regardless of your Paragon. As I mentioned, between Lightning Nova and Teleport, you just have tremendous mobility. Heart of the Storm, this is going to turn Ice Armor into Storm Armor. Same reason as yesterday. The tooltip when you go under your skills for the Heart of the Storm version of this ability does not do justice to how much damage it actually deals. Okay, it does much more damage than it shows or indicates there. So we're still going to go with these two essences, and very strong when paired together. So just want to show off a couple of things before we move over to farm. First one is by having that perfect situation. Okay, we have very good movement speed right off of the bat. All right, we don't need to kill anything. We can immediately start moving. Same thing when coming from a start, just waiting for this buff to wear off. We can cast Lightning Nova and immediately we're fast. We can alternate these, and we can basically just zoom around as much as we want, giving us very high mobility, and we don't need the massive cooldown reduction or reforges that we might need with the whale build, right? You can run the reforges that you prefer. You can not worry about having every slot awakened. You'll still be kind of able to overlap the teleport and the Nova accordingly and keep this uptime. So it's a lot more user friendly, does not require the investment per se that the other build does. So this is why it's so popular, and this is why so many people run it. So let's take a look at set pieces as well. Now I'm running 4-piece Isatar, 2-piece Vithus. 2-piece Vithus is massive for this build. Okay, you get increased duration of so much, your own buffs, the speed, the movement speed, the increased damage, the procs, anything that you have. Now, there's a ton of other sets that work, and you can see I have very little set gear at this point, but we can show off a lot just from this. Shalbas, increased primary damage is actually going to benefit this loadout. Now, this loadout compared to the build yesterday uses primary attack way more often. In fact, you're basically going to get to a pack, throw out some AoE, and then finish everything off with your primary. You'll be using primary almost every pack. So there is some benefit to having it there. I don't think it's the best choice, but it is an option if you're like me and you've recently gotten into Inferno and don't have a whole bunch of set pieces quite yet. Now, another option is also Gloom, and this is going to increase your damage by 15% whenever you use a dash. Anytime you use teleport, this is actually going to buff your damage. This is also a decent option. In fact, you can even run 4-piece and get increased critical strike. So another option here. 4-piece Shalbas is also an option as well. They gradually increase your attack speed. Again, not my first choice, but I should have mentioned that it is viable as well, depending on what you have. You can also use Banquet. Now, you're going to have burning effects, damage over time. You're going to have continual effects from something like the Torrent. So you are getting benefit from this as well. I don't find the crit chance stacking to a tremendous degree, but it does every now and then. Again, not my preferred choice. If using it, I would prefer to stick to 2-piece and then pair it with something else like Grace. But again, I still think that 4-piece Isatar is stronger than that combo. Again, we have Grace, which we mentioned. You can run 2-piece, 4-piece, both of which are viable. And you can see where I'm going this. We don't even have to kind of keep going with any more additional sets and so forth. But so many options. So again, just something. And the point of going through all the sets like this was just to showcase just how viable it is and how flexible it is compared to the other build. You have way more options, so this is going to fit a lot more players. Now, playing the build, fairly simple, and I also want to talk a little bit about how to open world farm. We have a ton of new players, and we've shown videos where we do a little bit of farming, but we don't really talk about the concept. So I'm going to go through the build and kind of the rotation, and then kind of segue into just farming in general. So what we want to do here is basically just put our storm armor up, cast our torrent, use some kind of speed boost. In this case, I use Nova. Now I'll go ahead and swap direction because somebody was farming in the opposite direction. See if I can get an invite here real quick, and then we'll keep moving. So now that I get caught up and get my controller back in my hand, hopefully we can keep pace with the Crusader. So I'm using my movement speed, putting my shield up. I'm running through the mobs because the storm armor needs to hit the mobs to do it, hitting the torrent, and now we're kind of continuing on. You can see it still has relatively good damage. I'm not using the primary attack as much as I would if I were solo, right? Because I have somebody else helping me clear the mobs. But you can, in fact, see that I am using it a fair amount. And in terms of speed, obviously, it's good. Crusader may not be the fastest class anymore, but it was pretty much regarded as the standard for farm speed for a really long time. So I still think a lot of people have that frame of reference and what to kind of keep pace with. So you can see I'm keeping up basically no problem. I can use the teleport to cut corners to some degree and essentially stay in the route and contribute to the farm overall. And it's very easy to play. It does not have that pattern that you kind of have to keep track of like the other build does. So very simple, very mindless, which are always big, strong candidates for good farm builds, right? We don't want something to be tedious or something to kind of be something that requires a ton of focus. So what we're doing here in general is running around in circles or a loop. And that means we're killing the same packs in the same order over and over. And the idea of this is to collect not just the monstrous essences that drop for the bestiary turn-ins, but we're also trying to pick up these items, whether it be the whites, the blues, the yellows, or potentially legendary items. We're picking these up so that we can salvage them at the blacksmith and increase our primary gear. And as we increase our primary gears, you can see here, we actually get additional combat rating. Along with that, we'll get additional lines that we can put reforges on that you get more beneficial stats. So if you're unfamiliar with this, as always, please ask questions. If you're new to the channel, you can ask a question about anything that you like. Another tactic that I always recommend when talking about farming is farm in a group, okay? There's a ton of benefits here. If I have to go AFK, I can stand here and still get credit. There'll still be items. Now, I don't want to stand here and leech for ever, especially when I haven't told my party member I'm going AFK. But you can do this. You can take a quick break. You can tell your party, be right back 2 minutes. I need to get up. And you just continue to get benefit. So keep that in mind. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.